Hey, what's up, guys? It's Reed Young, aka Shuda here. I'm making you a hand review for this 6 max no limit game for transformpoker.com. Hope you guys enjoy it. For this video, we're going to be talking about a hand. It's going to be a little controversial, I think, where I think the correct play is to bet call a jack high draw on the turn. So before you start calling me crazy and flaming me, I want to show you guys what goes down in this hand. So pre-flop I think is entirely standard here on the button. The cutoff raises. We call on the button Jack 10 suited. It's a great hand to flat with. We should dominate some of the cutoff's opening range, and it looks like there's some weaker players yet to act if we can just go by stack size, and maybe even the cutoff is a little bit of a weaker player himself because he's not buying in for full stack. Generally that points to a weaker player, but try not to make any assumptions without additional information. So we see a multi-way flop, which Jack 10 suited, especially in position, is fantastic for. And we just smash the hell out of the flop. We flop an open-ended straight flush draw 2 overcards. It's probably about the best flop that this hand can get, except for ace, king, queen, or something like that, where we flop a straight. So the question the poster of this hand had was, what should I do now? I'm facing this continuation bet. It's 10 into 17, and we have a likely weak player yet to act. We might want to keep him in the pot because we have such a strong draw. We might want to semi-bluff raise. So what do? I think this is actually an extremely clear raise because of several reasons. I guess I'll just list them out and go through them. So first off, the bet size of 10 into 17, especially with a weaker player yet to act, or a presumably weaker player yet to act, in the small blind, allegedly weak, I guess, innocent till proven guilty, yet to act in the small blind. He bets 10 into 17. It's a pretty small bet, pretty close to half the pot, maybe around 60% of the pot, when he could be betting something like 15 here with a hand like aces and just expecting any draw, which is probably about any piece of this board, hands like 10-9, pocket sevens, ace-7, queen-jack of diamonds, anything like that to continue, almost no matter what the bet size is, especially from a weaker player. So when he bets 10, that kind of, for a lot of people, means that he just doesn't have a good hand and he's taking a little stab at it with something like king-queen, something he'll almost certainly fold to a semi-bluff raise here from us. So right away, we're pretty optimistic about the efficacy of a semi-bluff raise just because of bet size. And given that he's not buying in for full stack, I think we can kind of assume that it's even less likely that this type of a bet size is a trick and probably more of an indication of the strength of his hand. So the cutoff bet's 10. I think that's one reason why we should go ahead and semi-bluff raise. Another reason, the small blind is a bit of a weaker player, but he might overplay some of his draws. So if we end up flatting here and the small blind makes it something like 42, we are stuck in a strange spot where shoving is fine, but we really don't have any folding equity. And flatting is fine, but then we might put ourselves into a spot on the turn where we have to call an all-in, and we only have jack high. That might sound confusing because of how I started out the video, but it's meant mostly for the cutoff, and I'll explain that right now. So I think shutting out the small blind, shutting out some not better draws, but hands that will have showdown value if we don't improve, is a good idea. So if we flat, we don't want them just to shove like queen jack here necessarily. I mean, it's not like the worst result. It's essentially a race for us. We're probably a little bit ahead even. But it limits his options, and it makes us, and here's the most important part, it makes us more difficult to play against, from the cutoff standpoint and the small blind standpoint. So when we raise a hand like Jack 10 suited here, even though when we do get all in, we expect to have the, quote-unquote worst hand most of the time, in that they're going to have some sort of pair or better almost always, or even an ace-high draw, something like that does pretty well unimproved. We actually have a ton of equity against almost anything you can name here. So even against a set, we still have an open-ended straight draw, 9 outs to clubs. Yeah, I mean, the possibilities are just fantastic. There's really no wrong you can do here. So I think it's one of the best hands to raise for that reason. Also, a reason to raise is because if he flats us, and then I guess here's kind of the maybe unorthodox seeming part of the video. If he flats us on the flop and the turn blanks off, if it's something like the King of Hearts, where maybe it's an okay card for us to bluff, but maybe not the greatest. Really the only things that improve are like King, Queen of Clubs or King, Jack of Clubs in our range. We might get check raised all in as a semi-bluff with a weaker hand, something like Queen, Jack, or pocket sevens or something like that decides that check calling the turn is bad, but maybe he can get some value or induce enough folds rather by check raising the turn. So the issue is, though, if we raise a polarized range on the flop where we are only raising hands like Queen, Jack of Hearts, something that can never really improve that great on the turn except for a 10, Queen or Jack are nice, but it's not like the nuts or anything. It's still pretty easy to read our range. So if he wants to check raise the turn with something like aces, it doesn't really accomplish all that much on a lot of turns, because it's really the only thing it's doing is stopping us from bluffing. If he's going to get called and we're raising with such a polarized range, it's always going to be with a better hand. And that hurts the efficacy of his check raise. And if he's never check raising with a worse hand when we're betting a hand like pocket eights, then that hurts the value of our hands like pocket eights. So what we need to do is actually bet call with some of our extremely strong draws to balance this out. And notice I'm not really talking about doing it with every single ace-high draw necessarily. I'm talking about choosing the best few draws to balance with your best few value combinations. So all around, we're not talking about a lot of combinations here, and that's another reason why I think this is a very standard raise, and it's what's going to be the closest to optimal play for this situation. So that's, I think, in general, the best play. There's some other things that you could consider, like if the small blind were to make a small raise and then is capable of folding to a shove, say the small blind makes it 30, the cutoff calls with a wide range, then we shove and they're both capable of folding big hands, then maybe flatting is a better play, but that's just not going to happen in most 1-2 games. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, consider hitting the like button. It helps spread the word for Transform Poker, and we would definitely appreciate it. And I look forward to answering your questions in the comment section. Take care, guys.